Welcome to Talking Insights, the podcast that brings you the trends and innovations of the insights industry. I'm your host, Antonio, and today we're joined by Tom Ellis to discuss his award-winning project, winning Olympic gold with Corona Zero, an extraordinary campaign that launched AB InBev's non-alcoholic beer, Corona Zero, during the 2024 Olympics, and redefine how qualitative research can be fast, deep, and culturally resonant. Tom, welcome to Talking Insights. Welcome to the show. And first and foremost, congrats on your awards. The project winning Olympic gold with Corona Zero just won an award at the SMR Awards, the Global Qualitative Excellence Award. So congrats for that.
Thank you.
I want to know more about the project. Can you explain me a bit of what the project is about, but also the timeline? 3 weeks to deliver actionable insights sounds almost impossible. Tell me everything.
Yeah. Well, no, look, first of all, thank you for the congratulations. We are thrilled to have won the award with SMR. It's always a great honor and lots of brilliant sort of competition up there as well. So yeah, I mean, what to say about the project? Really, I think you're right to talk about the timeline, because we had this inverted commas impossible brief, which was AB InBev had just signed up for sponsorship of the Olympics, the Paris Olympics. And they were it was going to be the first time they'd ever sponsored the Olympics, the first ever kind of beer sponsor of the Olympics. And so everything was suddenly on this frantic timeline with this global stage, as you can imagine. So high pressure, high visibility. And they basically said, look, the agency have come up with 3 different or 4 different creative routes. We need to pick the one that works the best, and we need your help. And we've been long-term partners with AB InBev across all their major global brands. So we know them, they know us. And they said, and by the way, we shoot in 3 weeks, basically. So it's like, okay, yeah, no problem then. So how are we going to do this? And that is often the challenge in the brief forces a little bit of creativity, doesn't it? So actually, we're quite grateful. I think the 3 weeks put a real pressure on us, because how are we going to deliver the kind of depth of understanding, the rigor of understanding, when I mean, basically all that time was going to be taken up with doing the field work, let alone sort of the time for analysis. So that's as you say, that's the challenge, that's the brief. And what we did ultimately was blend, no surprise here, blend AI, but I'll talk a little bit more about what was perhaps special about the AI and focused about the AI, with expert human moderation and analysis. And I think it's really important to emphasize that this isn't a story about AI. This is a story about a hybrid approach, because that's when you get, in our experience, and certainly in this case study, that's when you get the best out of it.
Before we delve into the AI part, was it difficult, because Corona and the Olympics, 2 separate things, completely different. Was it difficult to reconcile the more relaxed values of Corona with the more intensive and rigor of the Olympic Games?
Yeah, you've put your finger on it, right? You've got this beer that's all about, its home is the beach, right? It's about relaxation, as you say. It's meant to signify that sort of almost that kind of feeling that you're taking a breather, taking a break. And then you've got these world-class athletes sort of charging around a track or throwing things or throwing themselves off things. And it feels like 2 very different sort of worlds. So yeah, that was the creative challenge, as well as our challenge in trying to understand where that overlap lies. Where was it going to be that, as a viewer, I could not just see that this brand was kind of plonked onto, to use a very British phrase, right? Plonked onto the Olympics as a sponsor. And let's face it, I think a lot of sponsorship, that's what you feel. You're like, okay, brilliant. You've got a big budget. You've been able to buy some time with Messi or with, and I don't really get why you're associated with this event. So that was the sort of unlock. And I think that it's always hard when we come to these events and any sort of sponsorship, I would suggest, but also to see things from the perspective of the fan. That's ultimately what you're trying to do, to understand why are they turning up
Yeah.
to watch the Olympics. And it was in that ability of understanding why they were turning up and not just seeing it as it's all about kind of this amazing moment of energy that is the competitor experience, right?
Right.
But what's the fan experience? Why are they going? And I think that's where we found the unlock between the relaxation on the one hand of the that the beer stands for, that Corona stands for, and the Olympics. And by the way, Antonio, maybe just one thing to point out here, which is it wasn't Corona, normal alcoholic Corona. They were
Yeah.
pushing for Corona Zero.
Corona
It
Zero.
was
Yeah.
their non-alcoholic variant. And because it was in Paris and the French have sort of certain laws and the Olympics obviously have certain sort of rules, we were also having to put that little shift in as well.
Right. No, it's very important because, yeah, obviously these types of events, I mean, it's very strict, and I can imagine that you can just have like a alcoholic beverage just sponsoring it. But now I want to talk about the AI because my understanding is that you used your AI tool, your company's AI tool,
Yep.
Lexi.
Yes.
How did you work with the AI tool, and then you incorporated some human part within the work of it? How did the whole thing work out?
So this is, I think, to us the kind of great answer of how 1 + 1 = 3. And it's how do you use AI for what it's great at and human beings for what they're great at. So Lexi, as you say, is what we call our internal AI tool. Lexi's great skill, and she's developed over the years, but Lexi's great skill and what her name comes from is motivational analysis. So she deep dives into the words that people use. And all the words we use give clues as to what we're really thinking. You can influence them. If you put a painting of a battle in a meeting room, you start to talk about targets and beating the enemy and things like that. If you put a nice sort of serene picture, it changes the language people use. So it seeps into our language, but also it seeps out of our language. And what Lexi and AI can do is really careful lexical analysis, hence the name, of looking at word by word. What are the metaphors we're using? What are the similes? What are the words and language that might give clues as to our ultimate motivation? And that is what we would term the human job to be done. Right. So I'm not just sort of sitting in front of the Olympics at the TV to watch my team win. I want something bigger out of that. I don't just buy a beer because I want a refreshing um, beverage to go with my barbecue. I want to show off and impress a girl. I want to have something that makes me feel a bit smarter. Like I want to reward myself because I've had a great week or a bad week. So these are the sort of bigger human goals. And that's what Lexi does effectively. She goes through word by word, and again, without getting into the too fine a detail, that's unusual. A lot of a chat GPT, for example, will by and large skim read, but Lexi does it in a very careful analytical manner. And that gives us a really strong sense of what these bigger human motivations are. So that's the sexy kind of power of Lexi, so to speak. Then what we did was we designed, so our kind of talented human researchers designed ways that we could elicit from the people we were going to be researching with what those motivations might be. So we got them before we even saw a concept or a creative route to tell us stories about their Olympic experience. So what was their first memory? What really kind of brought it to life? What was their kind of moment where the Olympics really had an impact on them? Tell a projective story about the Olympics and what it means in your life. So these different ways that provide great fuel, great sort of language that Lexi can then dive into. What that gave us was going in a really clear sense of what the motivations. Then there were a number of key motivations. Communal achievement, which is really interesting because often we think about achievement, one gold medal, right, in the Olympics. But communal achievement was really important. This sense of belonging. I'm there. I'm supporting my country or my athletes that I feel connected to. Those were some of the things. And effectively, there's been huge studies on this, massive meta-analyses of 700 plus studies that show if you match your motive in your creative with what people want, then you're going to get much better cut through. It's going to shift behavior, i.e. get people to buy it. So it's going to have much more impact. And so our hypothesis going in is we know the motivations, and the creative route that best matches those motivations, or when people respond to it, the motivations that they get out of it that best match, will be the most successful one. So that was going in what we thought. And the science was right, but it's really interesting when you talk to people. They often can't articulate why they like a particular creative route, or they'll give you in qualitative, right? They'll give you some answers, but it's an over-rationalization often because they don't really know. The can't say, won't say challenge. But what we could tell was that the routes that were the strongest, or the route that was the strongest, was the one that was showing the greatest motivational match. So our human analysis and our AI analysis were matching up.
You used two audiences, right? The US, Brazil, for this study, to work on this project. Were there a lot of different cultural aspects between the two audiences that you used on this concept?
It's a great question. There were, and I think this is really important, especially when you're looking for global campaigns, the deeper human motivation was much more similar than different, right? So the cultural piece was, there were lots of interesting cultural nuances about how, as you say, the Brazilians and the US, as you might expect, two very different cultures, responded to the kind of athletes they saw, or the scenes they saw, or what they felt, what they talked about the Olympics. Their expectations of winning were, the US want to be top of the table. The Brazilians are delighted. This sounds really but delighted to win gold medals. They're super excited by that. They don't have the investment that they put behind that. So that you would think like, wow, these are going to be so different. But underlying it all, it did come back to these same human motivations. And I think sometimes in this day and age, we talk so much about these differences, what separates us, whether that's within a country, are you blue, are you red? Are you left or right, or whatever it is, whether that's across cultures as well. We often emphasize the differences, but actually we should still be looking for the similarities. And we can't be ignorant of the differences, absolutely, but especially for businesses that are trying to build global brands and create global communications, as in this case, that's more powerful in our point of view. So what we were very pleased, and certainly the client felt was the guys at AB InBev felt was really rich and strong, was that these two diverse cultures actually were very aligned in those core motivations that they brought to the Olympics.
Right. And it was a very successful campaign, right? Like, I have it here that there was a 440% volume growth. There was a lot of engagement. Was there an outcome that you were most proud of it?
I mean, look, a lot of the time we are so upstream in the work, aren't we? It's hard to sometimes say, hey, look, this, and we've got to give, I would be remiss to not give great credit to the creative, to the work that the marketing team obviously do and how they activate it, etc. But I think for us, that feeling that this route really flew, and you could see that our work, our insight really guided some choices, coming back to the beginning on a rapid timeline. It allowed and enabled the client to make some really clear choices that had great results. That's what we're proudest of. And obviously, when you see, as you say, that sort of massive growth in sales, this outperforming in a number of different metrics, long-time Olympic sponsors, we felt that really it backed up the work that we'd done and the sort of approach that we'd taken. So I think it was so pleasing for us to really get those tangible results, because often we are helping a client analyze a category, and that might feed into decisions that they make down the line, but it might be 2-3 years before there's results that we are sort of able to feel like we had an influence on, and even then that can be tricky to argue. So it was the speed of this and the end result, I think, just gave us real confidence. And of course, moving forward, it's helped with AB InBev to say, right, this approach actually really works. And again, on the back of the award, we've had a lot of people coming to us and starting to say, okay, well, tell me more about motive matching, because this sounds like there's real scientific rigor behind it, and it can be done at speed and kind of in a more qualitative way. So yeah, it's powerful.
And the speed is interesting. I know that we already mentioned it a couple times, the timeline and the speed that this project was done. But I feel like it's also a very interesting point to showcase to other researchers, other marketeers that are working on sometimes in very tight timelines, and at least show them that it's possible. Obviously, with you had the help with AI, you had the tool to help you with that, but it's possible. Do you have any advice for anyone working in these types of tight timelines, apart from use contacting you and use
I think,
the Lexi?
yeah, well, and I mean, use AI to accelerate for sure. I think beyond that, Antonio, to me, we are not getting longer timelines, right? No one is going to start extending these things out anymore. We have to, as an industry, adapt to how we can give people the depth and confidence. So I guess there are a few things that spring to mind. One is, what can you build on from behavioral and psychological science? I mean, for us, that's really important. What's already known that's out there that can either inspire you in the way you approach this to do it with rigor and confidence, or can give you some of the answers already? There's an awful lot. We've done a lot of work around things like the FIFA World Cup. There's a lot of studies out there that exist on what motivates fans to watch football games. Okay, so that's in behavior science and psychology. So leverage what is already known. Secondly, there is AI, but there is also HI, human intelligence. Get the right people on the job, and let's get a little bit back to trusting our gut. And I think sometimes you kind of just, our team knew which the right route was, but it was when it matched up that it gave them the confidence and the client the confidence to go, yeah, it's not just a bunch of people saying, yeah, we've spoken to a few people in the US because it's qualitative, a few people in Brazil, and they think this. It was sort of like, yes, but we can also see some real evidence behind it. So what are the ways that, especially in qualitative, you can find data points, either from your work or supporting from beyond, to accelerate that sense of rigor, I guess? And ultimately, we've just got to move forward. We've got to find ways and experiment and push ourselves to do these things. And sometimes that is 80-20. Sometimes maybe it's not going to be the depth that you need, but the client needs the headlines. And I think it's just, again, for the client teams as well, you've got to, work in partnership. And again, I would take my hat off to the guys at AB InBev. They've been such brilliant partners for us over the long term. They trusted us, but they also worked with us to get this result. So it's always a partnership on those sort of timelines.
Great insights, great advice. Tom, thank you so much for the conversation. Congrats again on the award. Congrats on the project. I think it's a very interesting one. Yeah. Congrats for everything, and thank you so much
Thank
for being
you.
here.
Thank you for having me. It's been a real delight. Thanks, Antonio.
And that's all for today, folks. Talking Insights is a production of Research World and SMR, bringing you the stories, voices, and ideas shaping the insights community around the world. If you'd like to be featured in a future episode, share your story, or learn more about sponsoring opportunities, send us an email at podcast@smr.org. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And join us next week for another great conversation. See ya.